Thank you for joining me. My name is Cassandra Dinkelman. I am the Education Resource Officer at Down Syndrome Queensland. If you have any questions and you would like to ask me, my email address is edsupport@downsyndromeqld.org.au. The phone number is 3356 6655. This webinar is Transitions, both in and around primary school. Thank you.
Okay, so in this webinar, we'll explain why a truly inclusive educational environment is always preferable for everybody, for every student, and particularly those with disability. It will outline the obligations of schools to include students with a disability and discuss practical tactics on how this is done to the greatest benefit of all involved. The webinar includes anecdotes and real-life experiences illustrating best practice in action, and will demonstrate that inclusion is not just something that's pie-in-the-sky idea, but it's one that is achievable. It benefits all involved, and it should be the goal of every classroom and every school. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional and historic custodians of the land on which I present from today, the Yagara people of Brisbane. I extend my acknowledgement to all First Nations people here today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So a lot of students will find transitioning difficult in one way or another, whether it's uncertainty, a lack of understanding, anxiety, or feeling overwhelmed. Maybe it's sensory issues or sensory overload. If we aren't intentional about the way that we instigate a transition, we're more likely to encounter difficult behaviour. Things such as meltdowns, escapism, so running away, or more subtle behaviours, but they can be just as distracting. Today, we will look at effective partnerships, the transition process, communication, vision statements and student profiles, having high expectations, independence or working towards independence, and then issues or concerns and solutions. I just want to point out or remind you that starting school is an exciting milestone for all students. For individuals with diverse learning requirements, it's important to be intentional and allow additional time and support to ensure that the transition is as smooth as and positive for all. I've missed the word experience. I realise that's why it doesn't sound right. So as smooth and positive an experience for all. We want to make sure that that happens for everybody. So looking at transitions then, all transitions, whether they're within a school or to school, we need to be considering carefully what is happening within those transitions, and to ensure that all students understand the expectations, the process and the purpose. We need to be consistent. The transitions that we have must be consistent and intentional. Expect the best from every single student. I'm sure you've heard or been that teacher who has said to students at the beginning of the year, no, we're going to do that again. I want to try that again and see everybody having a really good go at it this time. Well, that's what we're expecting that's what we need to be expecting for all students. So begin with scaffolding the expectations and then give regular assistance as they're learning those transitions or that transition that is happening, and then remove the support slowly when you can see that the student is ready. So as they're starting to get the hang of it, they're starting to tell you what comes next, or maybe look like they're about to do the next part of that transition, then you would be moving that support away so that they can show more independence or work towards more independence. Allow time for error and reteaching. Don't expect perfection right away from students, but do expect that they improve. So every time they have a go at something or a transition, for example, you should be able to see that they are more capable and more confident of achieving that transition. Use visuals as much as possible and wherever you can. Use them as social stories, for visual cues and reminders. And that doesn't have to be just for the students who need it. It could be for all students, because actually you'll find that lots of students in your class will need visual supports. Know the child. So that means medically, behaviourally, and academically, make sure that you know all of your students. So looking at formal education. So at the school level, we're aiming for a top-down culture of inclusion from the principal down, including every member of staff, and the volunteers in the school. If it's not the case, we can start with anyone, but it is important to start at the top where you can. Having a diverse workforce is important as well. So we know that we know of schools where they've had students with Down syndrome, and they've decided that that means they need to employ adults with Down syndrome so that that student can see someone within their immediate community, working and being relied upon for the work that they do. But don't let that be a stopping point. Students need to see diversity in staff so that they can better understand the value of diversity. Diversity in the workplace has been shown to increase productivity and creativity across staff. It improves cultural awareness across the school community, builds a positive reputation for the school, and makes the school more desirable in terms of relatability and welcoming all. Not to mention the fact that it's just nicer. When there's diversity within your environment, it's just more pleasant to be there. When you're providing inclusive opportunities within a school community, we need to ensure that we include all aspects. And by that, we mean things such as sports, drama, art, and any other extracurricular activities such as outside of school hours care. So at my son's school, for example, we identified that social skills was an area to work on, and the outside of school hours care has been beneficial in supporting him in this area. The team provide the extra support, scaffolding that understanding of what happens to make a friendship work or make a friendship successful. And he loves the opportunity to socialise and practice those things with so many students of so many different ages. So this brings me to the importance of whole school training. That means that every staff member and every volunteer should take part in training that shares the importance of including all students in a meaningful and productive way, which will then make it easier to have explicit teaching expectations. So if every single person is experiencing the same training and using the same level of expectation, then it's clear for all the students within the school. So let's look then at effective partnerships. By effective partnerships, we're going to look more closely at regular communication, respect and honesty, allied health professionals, and working together. And we'll pull those apart and really start to think about what that means for everybody. So let's start with communication. So we need to create an effective and collaborative partnership. Be sure to find out what works, for all parties involved. Work out what you want to convey and how you want to convey things. So if there's an issue or a concern, that might be different to a celebration of some kind. Have the conversations and stick to it. Do you want to use a communication book? Do you want to only use email? Is it a conversation at the end of the day or the beginning of the day, if that's suitable for everyone? Could you possibly use applications? So for example, you might use something like Seesaw or Dojo with the teacher, and the teacher is able to respond to those messages when it's appropriate for them. Or is it a phone call? And perhaps it's an occasional informal meeting. But remember, most of all, that communication doesn't need to be a formal affair. It doesn't need to be formal every single time. There are occasions when it does need to be, but it doesn't have to happen every single time. So next we'll look at respect and honesty. So be honest, both as the parent and as the teacher. We need everyone to be honest in that situation. Nobody's expecting you as the professional to have all of the answers. Even the most experienced will have moments where they have to rethink the strategies. So be honest and share that information so that parents know what to expect of you and where they might step in should that be something they need to do, or should that be something they think they need to do, or whether it's appropriate or not. So the things I want to point out to you in this is that parents know their children best. They are the subject matter expert on their child. So there's every chance that they know more about their child than you have learnt so far. So ask them questions. Give respect to get respect. So make sure that when you're approaching parents, you're talking to the families, that you're giving them the respect that you're expecting in return, but give it first. Limitations and areas of inexperience. So as I said, nobody is expecting you to have all the answers. You don't have to have known or downloaded all of the training out there, not straight away anyway, but let people know that you are interested in finding out more, but at this point in time, you're not quite sure what to do, or you're not quite sure how to tackle that concern. And make sure you talk about those concerns, whatever they may be, so that families know what's going on. Allied health professionals. So often students come with a conglomerate of allied professionals that they regularly see and will assist them to progress towards their milestones. So they'll so what I want to ask you is, will your school allow these allied health professionals to conduct the appointments at the school? It's up to the discretion of the principal. Some schools consider the time out of class most important or most concern. So whereas a student might take the day off to go to their appointment at lunchtime to see a speech pathologist, if that student's speech pathologist came to school and they had 40 minutes with them and then they were able to go back to class, then you would have more attendance, higher attendance rates. But sometimes schools find it difficult to find them a space to be able to do that. How will you collaborate to create the best outcomes for the student? So consolidation at school, maybe a few minutes for the teacher to speak with the allied health professional after a session, for example. Having sessions at school means that they can also see the student within the setting and offer suggestions if it's needed. And then it also brings about the opportunity for ICP, ILP, PLP, whatever you're using at your school, incorporation. So everybody working towards the same goal and being able to contribute to that planning document. And so working together then, we often say teamwork makes the dream work, but this circumstance is no different to any other. We need the collaboration during verification and subsequent program planning. As I said, the parents are the subject matter experts in their student, in their child. So that would be ideal, having that background knowledge and information about the child when you're trying to plan those things. Have or build strong and intentional parent-teacher relationships. They aren't just something that happens, and they aren't something that just keeps going. You have to work on them. So make sure that they are strong and intentional. Acknowledge parent concerns or their wants or their visions. Don't ignore them. And where you can, certainly do what you can to make changes if that's at all possible. So transition process. We're thinking about things such as home preparation, what you could be telling parents they need to be helping their child with for the transition at home. The teacher preparation, the intentional transition programs that you could put in place, and other considerations. So home prep, that might include things like working towards independence at school with as many skills as possible. So for example, you can see here the student on the child on the sofa putting their socks on. They're having a go at doing that themselves. There's a schedule there for getting dressed. First of all, the parent might work with the child on doing that, and then might work towards getting the student to do, or the child to do that on their own. Maybe learning how to open lunch boxes and those sorts of things, how to recognise or to wear a hat when they go out to play, and how to recognise their name when they're looking at, you know, for their belongings, particularly if the school has a school bag or those sorts of things. These are things that parents can be working on at home. And don't forget to mention to the parents as well that Down Syndrome Queensland has a parent-teacher prep pack. And so the idea of that is the parent gets in contact with Down Syndrome Queensland. We send out the pack to them. They receive the pack, and then they hand that on to you, because there is very useful information in there in terms of visual supports, lots of ideas and suggestions, and you know, those sorts of things, which really help you start you off in the right direction when you have a student with Down syndrome in your class. So teacher prep, what we're looking for is that professional development. So do you feel equipped, or are there some things that you might need to spend time learning? So for example, that might be things such as communication or understanding Down syndrome, or perhaps behaviour of students with Down syndrome, or looking at visual supports. Well, there's good news there. Down Syndrome Queensland has available webinars for every single one of those topics and more. We keep those in our on our YouTube channel, and you can find them in the education playlist. Also supports. So what supports do you think you're going to need or will be imperative to ensure a meaningful educational experience for all students? And can these be provided in-house, or does there need to be an AVT's visit involved, or perhaps professional development? With Down Syndrome Queensland, we help support all students with intellectual disability, so that potentially could be something that you look at in respect to that support. And then transition programs, so making sure that we are intentional, as I said before, with the programs that we have in place. We're inclusive with those programs. The programs are explicit. It must be explicitly taught, every single step. Reverse transitions, if that's something that's going to work for you and the students. And holiday contact. So for example, things like Zoom calls or postcards or videos. What I've done in the past as a teacher, I have sent postcards to every student in my class, just saying, really looking forward to seeing you. I've already started putting things up on our wall to make it look like our home. And if you were looking at doing that sort of thing in a modern day room, you could perhaps organise a Zoom call, or you could send the students a link to a video where you could show them around the classroom and say, have a look at what we're doing in our classroom. This is what it's going to look like when you start next week, or 2 weeks time, or whatever. You could use social stories where you're taking photos of what to expect, the teachers and the other adults that they're going to encounter, maybe making friends and saying goodbye to their parents in the mornings. Or you could do things such as picture books. So, similar sorts of things where you could be telling them about the teachers or the adults in the room, the play areas that they can go to, the classroom, and the toilets where they'll find those things. So here are some examples of the social stories that you can find. Plenty of those online. If you have a look, you'll see that there's teacher pay teacher on there, teachers pay teachers on there quite a bit. They have some great resources, or social stories, lots of great resources anyway. And other considerations would include things such as teacher aid. So we don't want students to rely on the teacher aid. They can be used periodically for certain things and areas of concern, but just as quickly as you introduce them, make sure that you are removing them at the same rate as well. Try to avoid, where you can, Velcro aids whereby the child is expecting the same adult or a level of support, or a certain level of support for every activity, because perhaps they've been used to having a teacher aide sitting next to them the whole time in their classroom. That's not what we're wanting. That's not helping students to be independent. Perhaps we could look at adding extra support within the playground instead, to helping them to learn how to play with their friends. Other considerations as well, we want to try and avoid things such as reduced enrolments. And if we're going to have reduced enrolments at the beginning of a transition time, then it needs to have a very definite end date. So, for example, the first week we're going to have 12 o'clock finishes. The following week we will finish at the end of the school day. Communication, we must have a way to communicate. I cannot express this strongly enough. If the family have not implemented something at home, then we need to be finding something, preferably with the support of a speech pathologist. And these are just some of the ideas. You'll find that some of your students are multimodal, some use PECS or a picture system, which is this one here. If I actually move, oh no, I can't move it. No, I can't move it. Okay. I don't know if you can see my mouse there, but PECS is up the top there. The picture exchange, the idea of using a picture, visual to represent something. Maybe the whole class can be learning Auslan or keyword sign. Some teachers have been sent on courses to learn keyword sign for their students. A pod book, which is this big one here. This is either A5 or A4 usually, and it's quite a thick, heavy book, but it has pretty much every topic in it. And then there are apps like this one here, Proloquo to go. Much easier, but it's on an iPad, or you can have lanyards and things like that for the playground. Oh, my mouse has disappeared. Okay, so vision statements, student profiles, those sorts of things. Anything that's going to help the adults who are working with a student to understand what needs to happen or works best for the student. So encourage the parents, where you can, to have a vision for their child. It helps to work backwards from the desired goal. So, for example, for my son, I want him to work independently, to be earning money in a job that he enjoys, and to be living either independently or with minimal support in a space that he enjoys as well, or in a space that he wants to be in. So from there, I have to work out how we're going to work towards him having that independence, and where are we going to start with that in school. And down the bottom there, we've got vision statements. So we've got Ellie Stafford, aged 5, in kindergarten. It says, "Teach me to soar and I will." Her vision statement says, "We envision our daughter living a life of choice. We envision her having relationships she feels are valuable. In her future, we envision our daughter working, doing work that she enjoys and that makes her feel productive. We envision our daughter living a happy and meaningful life surrounded by love and support." And then you'll find lots of boxes for various things that prove or that help show strengths, what works well and what she's working on and things she loves. But having those sorts of pieces of information for a student are very helpful. Now, this other one over here on the right-hand side is the student profile at a glance. It's blurry, and I realise you can probably still see it. It's actually for my son, but I've made up most of the areas on there, but just giving you an example. So a student profile at a glance, this is the sort of document that you would give to a relief teacher, PE teacher, a non-contact teacher, whoever is going to take your class that doesn't necessarily take them all the time, and they would need to know things about that student. So for example, the student's needs in terms of communication, behaviour and learning, the student's required adjustments in terms of at school, within the classroom and for the individual, and then the goals that we're working towards in terms of communication, behavioural and learning. And then perhaps some things down the bottom. I like working with these people. I work well with these people because we know sometimes it may be different people in both of those categories. I like to play with. I find it difficult when and for example, the example I've put here is I find it difficult when there is a lot of noise, I think it says, ear protection used. And when people sing the happy birthday song, I like my personal space. So those things would be important for someone to know who hasn't met the child or the student before. Any other important information, and then that would be, filled with the information for that person to be able to work successfully with a student. So then we move on to high expectations. So we need to make sure that we are assuming competence. All too often with my own son even, I will say to him all the time, I always assume competence of everybody else, but when it comes to my son, I will often say or think, oh, I'm not sure that he will be able to do that. So then I have to remember to push myself and say, but let's give it a go, and try not to use such negative expectation in the first place. So assume competence. Make sure that the activities that you're providing are meaningful and high interest. Nobody wants to be in boring activities because, of course, they're going to spend time trying to resist them. Build the confidence of the students and their self-esteem. So if we're working with high expectations where we are building their confidence and we are building their self-esteem, which then in turn is enabling them to become more independent learners. When we have high expectation of the student, they have greater engagement. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. What's the other way to describe, when you say something's going to happen, manifest, a manifestation. So this student is doing very well with their spelling because they're practicing them every single night. Or this student is doing very well with their spelling because they've learned how to read the words and are reading them with a friend. Those sorts of things. So the more we do have high expectations and speak positively about the student, the more they will expect that of themselves as well. And then top down mentally, I'm not sure what I've written that for now, actually, now that I read it. Let me read that little quote down the side here. Set expectations, make them a stretch, but not unreachable. We all need stretching from time to time, but they need to be attainable as well. So independence. What we're looking for is students with Down syndrome or an intellectual disability to not be the class mascot, to not have a Velcro aid, as we said before. We're working towards and creating independence for that student. So we need to make sure that they feel that personal freedom and the right to choice about their life. You know, those things come early on, where I hadn't really appreciated this before until my son changed schools, and then you could see, you're giving him a choice as to whether he comes in now or he does something else now. But that now he's going to need to learn about consequences as well, because one of those wasn't a preferred activity. You know, things like offering opportunities to succeed to the best of your ability and desires. That's what we're aiming towards for students. When we're giving them independence, we're giving them that chance to succeed and be proud of themselves, which will then grow and grow. The more they feel it, the more they achieve it, the more they'll grow with it. And the opportunity to make mistakes and realize that's okay, and then learn from the situation. That's such an important skill. It's really difficult to make a mistake, take a breath and say, that's okay, and then carry on. But it's something we all need to do. And if you are the kind of student who has had a Velcro aid the whole time, you may not have that opportunity to make mistakes. You may not have that opportunity to make a fall. You know, so we need to make sure we provide those opportunities as well. Standing back so that the student has the chance to trial it. Okay, this next one, if I'm reading it in my head, it doesn't make sense. Self-esteem and a belief that you can have control of your life. Of course, we all are aiming towards that. Nobody wants to be told what they have to do. And people believe that you are capable. So how lovely is it when you know the people around you believe you to be capable? Well, that's all we're asking for students as well. Okay, and then when we're thinking about dependence and independence, so in red are all the negative things. If we're offering Velcro aids and those sorts of, and various other strategies to step in for the student, we're going to find that we have these experiences. We have helplessness from the student. We have a defeatist attitude from the student. They have a surrogate communicator, and this is something you often see in older siblings of a younger child. So a younger child doesn't speak until they're a little bit older because, well, the older siblings spoke for them. So that's what I mean in terms of that. Don't let somebody else speak for them. Having codependence, so relying on that person who stands next to them to be able to communicate for them and those sorts of things, and to become disengaged, because quite honestly, if you're not involved in all of those things or interacting in those things, then why would you be interested at all in learning or participating in whatever's going on? Okay, so then for independence, what we're actually working towards is creating or enabling a student to be self-determined, to have the social skills, to be inquisitive, to become a problem solver, to feel engaged, and to be self-reliant. And all of those things will absolutely lead to independence. So strategies for independence. What you do to help create independence in the student in your class could be these things as we've got outlined here. So something as simple as step back. Use natural supports. So encourage the student to problem solve for themselves. If you don't give them the space to try this and fail, they will never learn. I distinctly remember as a child learning that if I wait long enough, the adult is going to tell me what that word is. I remember it took me a lot longer to learn to read because, well, actually, yep, most of the adults were too impatient and just wanted to tell me the words so we could move on. So encourage students to go to their peers first. This will encourage inclusion, understanding, respect, and camaraderie. And the students will also benefit from this too. It helps them to understand the subject matter or the concern more clearly. Give multiple methods for communication. It doesn't have to be one way for communicating and that's it. You could be offering verbal communication, visual communication, signing, and technology. Consider the impact of the environment too. Have you set up the classroom in such a way that you're utilising the space? Are you, do you have visuals everywhere? Do you have rule reminders that you're giving to the child? You know, we want to give them the best chance to succeed without assistance. So if we have those things in place, then that's going to make things more successful. Teach and reteach new skills or activities in a variety of contexts. So use different ways to reteach to cater for different learning styles, and this will help all students. So for example, we're going to learn our words one way. We're going to look at our words as flashcards, for example, and then we're going to play a game of hopscotch on them, and then we're going to play a game of snap with them. So you're learning in very different ways to recognize those words, but making sure that you're offering those skills over a variety of ways. Consider the impact of the environment. Have I just said that? I have. This is that technology issue I was telling you about. One step at a time. To begin with, until the student is fluent, start with one step in the instruction and don't move on from one step until it is evident that they are ready for the next. This is something that is not just going to benefit the student with Down syndrome in your class, it will benefit all. Modify expectations to ensure that tasks are at a suitable level for the student to be able to complete, whether it's independently, in a group or a pair. Success will breed a positive attitude. So we need to make sure that we're offering, you know, that modified expectation. And the last thing I would say to you in the strategies for independence is consistency, consistency, consistency. The consistency needs to be in the rules. It needs to be in the expectations. It needs to be in the timetable. It needs to be in the routine. Okay, those things are going to help a student to develop their independence. Potential issues or concerns that you might find along the way. The student might experience running or toileting might be an issue. They might feel anxious or have anxiety. Communication may be a concern. There might be separation anxiety. And I'll very quickly say to you, here's something I found as a reception or prep teacher, my UK teaching experience. A prep teacher many years ago was the 4 steps to saying goodbye, which is kiss, hug, wave, go. Don't extend out the goodbye. No more one more kisses or anything like that. You literally do the 1 kiss, 1 hug, 1 wave, 1 go. Practice it before school starts so that they get good at that too, or make sure you're telling the parents to practice that before school starts so that they get used to, you know, that way of saying things or doing things. Read The Kissing Hand and those kinds of books as well. Sometimes the issues could include understanding. Do we have enough understanding about the student, and does the student have enough understanding of our expectations as well? Maybe we don't have enough training at the moment. How could we get more of that? Mindset is very often an issue. Money or resources, we're told quite often, is an issue, and the culture within a school can often be an issue. But the potential solutions, so having a look at things like being strong and intentional in transition programs. So most schools run a transition program in term 4 for the previous year, and these tend to be 1 or 2 hours in the morning and introduce the students slowly to some of the aspects of school, like activities, different teachers, classrooms. They're fun and engaging, they're run by the teachers, and there's exposure to the classrooms and our playgrounds so that the students feel more at ease. Then we have things such as reverse transition. So staff visit students in their current environment. I've done this and found this to be quite a useful thing to do. Most often the students are more relaxed because they're comfortable in their settings, and you really truly get to see how they behave or what their level of participation is when you go and see in their environment. It's good for students with high levels of anxiety and uncertainty, and bringing the teacher into their space gives them more comfort. And you would do this sort of thing, you know, by going to maybe daycare or ECDP or their home. It depends on the school's policy, really, though. You would need to make sure that you are within your rights to do that. You've checked with everybody that it's okay to go ahead. Increased interactions. So slowly build up interactions with the teacher. Encourage them to go to them and less to you over the transition period. So step back where it's appropriate and allow natural social interactions to take place. So for example, towards the end of the year, you might send them for jobs to the teacher or messages to the teacher, or, you know, do things with that teacher's class, or manage to see that teacher in a different setting so that they can quickly chat to the class, for the children to feel like they've got a connection with them. Slow removal of parent or guardian. So sometimes it's very difficult to get parents to step out of the situation. So at the beginning of the year, parents are often made to feel that leaving their student early, what am I trying to say here? Talk to the teacher, discuss staying for a period if there's concern. Not as a scaffold, but as a safety net. Okay, so if there's an issue with a parent being in the room and they don't want to leave, or there's issue with their child being upset, then make sure that we're building something in so that we can reduce that over time. Okay, so the person is staying for 5 minutes. Next time they're staying for 4 minutes. Next time they're staying for 3 minutes, those sorts of things. Use visual supports. Help create understanding, engagement, and reduce anxiety and the unknown. So in our website, we have lots of resources in our shop. The shop is a bit misleading though, actually, because most of them are free. So go through there and you'll be able to find lots of useful visuals. Have or use things such as photos of the room, of the playground, and the staff for home referral. So I used to like making up a photo book, and that gives the students the opportunity to revisit over the school holidays, to remind them of what the school looks like, where they'll play, what their classroom looks like. If the teacher and teacher aide have already been assigned, then, you know, take photos of them as well. But even better, have the student in the photo so that they can see that they've already got a relationship with the teacher or the teacher aide or whoever it is who'll be working with them. Ensure that you, the educator, gain relevant information and education or skills needed to work with that student to the best of your ability. Have high expectations, like I said. Assumed competence is important, and regular breaks. We all need them. Okay, so then looking at things such as new year, new class, or new teacher, what would we do then? Okay, so between the grades, I want you to think about this, because I hadn't, until I saw this quote, it didn't really occur to me that it was quite this drastic. So changing teacher is like moving to a foreign country. You're likely to see anxiety, language, expectations, you know, like, so a language as in a new teacher will have different language. You know, their expectations of you might be different to the teacher that you've had previously. They might have a different approach. The sound of their classroom, or the smells in their classroom, or the lighting in their classroom might be different. And those things alone might be tricky enough for you to cope with. I know that because I am quite a loud person, I often had parents saying that their children found it difficult to cope with the noise in my classroom. So it was something I had to work on. But all of those changes, all of those differences from one teacher to the next are going to have an effect on your students. So this is the sort of thing that you could potentially make up now and next, you know. So looking at, you know, having a blue side, this is going to be the same next year. You'll have the same school, you'll have the same friends, you'll have the same lunch, you'll have the same bus, you'll do the same maths, you'll do the same, you'll be in the same playground, you'll have the same music. And these are the only things that are going to be different. You'll be in a different classroom, you might eat in a different area, and you'll have a different teacher, but all the other things are the same. So making sure that you build those sorts of things so that students can see, oh, we really do have quite a lot of things that are staying the same. And you could add in social stories and those sorts of things as well. Another one of those opportunities to share with you, do not rely on teacher aides to assist during transitions, or the student will become dependent on them to complete the transition. So we need the student to mostly be working without a teacher aide by their side for those transitions. Instead, focus on peer mentors and build independence. Peer mentors are one of the most valuable resources that you could ever tap into. And for a new class or a new teacher, so technical difficulties. So helping prepare students for the following year, even if it's just another grade in the school, it can help calm nerves and reduce the likelihood of behavioural incidents if we offer things, and I'm sure I said all of these just before, social stories, picture books, Zoom calls, emails, postcards, write during the holidays, have the teacher visit the classroom or send the student to the teacher in their classroom, have consistent visuals, so maybe even pass those visuals up from one year to the next, have intentional and detailed handover from the previous teacher. And don't be arrogant enough to think that you don't need it. Everyone needs handover. It's important. Encourage home to continue practicing academia over the holidays. Cannot stress that one enough. Because for a student who hasn't spent any time over the holidays going over anything or looking at anything, there's nothing more frightening than a new school year. Okay, so around the school. Within the school, whether it be transitioning from playtime to lining up or walking with the class to library or sports or specialists, transitioning around the school can be challenging for some students and increase the likelihood of encountering problem or unwanted behaviours. So teachers have reported that transitioning can result in students being in the wrong place at the wrong time. We've all had that. This can be confusion over where they think they should be or what they think they should be doing. Teachers experiencing verbal or physical outbursts, Things such as tipping over tables, climbing into port racks, shouting, screaming, pushing. This is most commonly because the student is emotionally and sensorially overloaded, running off, fight or flight or fright, ahead of the class. So students running off ahead of the class is an example too. So to the toilet, to the office, or to another classroom. We've even had reports of students running across busy roads or to the staff car park. Again, this will be due to uncertainty, being overwhelmed and taking flight, as I said earlier. Non-compliance with routine, refusal, climbing under desks, yelling no, or just generally dragging their feet. And my darling son's refusal is simply a no. And no engagement with anyone. No. Silliness, so we can have things such as running around, playing behaviour, escalating their mood perhaps, pulling faces. Students who are being disruptive, so screaming, tipping over furniture, basically any of the above things that we've mentioned already. So what can you do to help our students feel more calm, more knowledgeable, and be aware of what it is going on, what's going to happen, and the expectations we have for them? What can we do? These are some of the strategies that we would recommend to you from Down Syndrome Queensland. We would suggest that you give them warning, use a timer or a verbal reminder to help students know that an activity is coming to a close or that we'll be transitioning to another area or moving around the school. Predictability, use visual clues or class schedules and calendars to help students see what is happening throughout the day. Include a picture and the word in the schedule. If something is going to change within the regular routine, such as a substitute teacher or no PE or a fire drill, try to prepare the child for the change, either through giving their parents a call in the morning to warn them, or especially if it's the regular teacher that's going to be away, or create specific social stories for the child ready for the situation. So for example, in a fire drill, and you would have a social story about that. Use visuals, social stories. It should be personalised and specific to the student and include their picture doing the right thing. The expectations strip of appropriate behaviour. So things such as, have I got it on there? No, not necessarily. Oh, no, I don't. I've lost my place now that I've moved forward. Sitting on the mat, sitting at the desk, individual schedule specific to the student. So using things such as first and next is very helpful, or first, then, and next, or maybe even Ethan's or Susie's schedule, which you can see there over to the right hand side, where the student can move the things over once they've completed them. Utilize peers. As we stated before, our children are good and following what's going on around them, and they'll mimic their peers. So utilize this to your advantage, especially if they've formed any strong bonds with any peers. You know, have those peers assist them to do the right thing and go along with them. Teach a cue to signal for help. So don't look for something that is glaringly obvious. Maybe offer them a secret signal so that only you and that student know. That way they feel like not everybody else knows what it is that they're asking for when they need a bit of help, perhaps. Positive reinforcements. So students thrive, all students thrive on positive reinforcements, whether it be verbal affirmation, pat on the back, high five, or a sticker or a stamp. Utilize this to your benefit. Remember to keep the positive to negative ratio as 5 to 1. 5 positives for every 1 negative. If you have to give a negative, then make sure you've given 5 positives. That means you should be positively acknowledging all students 5 times positively before you ever broach a negative. Can be a tricky thing to do. Explicitly teach. So students who are new to a school or schooling in general might need extra time and assistance to learn transitions, and they might require being walked through the expectations several times with explicit teaching on expectations, process, and what to do if they run into trouble. This includes lining up in the morning, coming back to class after playtime as well as the expectations of the class walking around the school. In the playground then, so using other students as gatekeepers or models. So for example, when they go into an area they shouldn't be in, making sure that students know they need to come and tell you straight away that the student has gone into that area. Consider sensory issues. So provide choices that are less noisy, less loud, less whatever it is that the student needs. Provide alternatives. Make sure that there is positive reinforcement for behaviours that you desire in the student. Have high expectations, offer those social stories, and perhaps give them a personal timer. So you could give them something like a watch where they could be looking at that time and knowing that at a certain time they have to do this thing or they need to be in this area. So remember that we at Down Syndrome Queensland are here to help. We have free webinars. It says free periodic educator workshops. What I mean by that is we actually have free consultations. If you go through our ID8 system, we have phone consultations, emails, we have a biennial conference. We have had in the past modifying curriculum workshops, school observational visits, which those ones do come at a cost. And we also have whole school professional development workshops, which come at a cost as well. So when you're looking for visual downloads, in our resources section in the shop on our website, we have visual support, student profiles, ICP documents, adapted worksheets, webinar downloads, resource database, and a research database that is useful as well. And this is what I was telling you about in that in the free service. So for every student in your school with an intellectual disability, we offer a free 1-hour consultation. And in that free 1-hour consultation, you would be offered, or you would be given, a collection of resources that you would find useful. So make sure you inquire about that at our email. Our email is down the bottom there, education@downsyndromeqld.org.au. And then I would like to say thank you. 5 minutes late, but we did finally get there. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. My email address or my our lead education consultant's address is down the bottom there. And we do have references that I will share with you here. But if you would like any more of those, feel free to email me so that I can send them to you. Thank you very much.